Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As promised, I am back today to do a really fun spring video. I'm going to be sharing with you guys my top 10 spring palettes. I love switching up my eyeshadow palettes every season, and I just crave spring colors because they're a little bit softer, they're fun, they kind of put you in a good mood. So I'm excited to share them with you guys today. I have a big range here from very small palettes to very large palettes, very cheap palettes to very expensive palettes, but they're all beautiful. We're gonna go through them all, we'll do some swatching, and maybe you'll have one or two of these yourself that maybe you forgot about that you can pull out and use this spring. Hopefully that sounds like fun. Before we get into the palette, special welcome to my new visitors here. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider subscribing before you leave. Also make sure notifications are turned on. And with that, let's have a look at my 10 palettes. All right, so as I mentioned, there are 10 of these palettes. We're talking price range from about $60 down to about $2.99, and then everywhere in between. A couple of these might be discontinued, but I'm hoping if you have heard me talk about these before, hopefully you still have them because they've been favorites of mine for a very long time. I'm already giving too much away. So we're gonna go into these. They're not necessarily in any order, but I do have a top 5 and then a bottom 5, but keep in mind my bottom 5, these are still among my 10 favorite spring palettes. So let's start with this one right here. This is from Sydney Grace. It's the Tiny Marvels palette. This has been around for quite a long time. I just got my hands on this last year. They were kind enough to send this to me. I don't know why I held off for so long because this was one of my favorite palettes that I tried last year. It is beautiful. I mean, it's not hard for Sydney Grace to really win me over. You guys know how much I love their formulas, all of their eyeshadow palettes. I feel like every time I talk about them, it sounds like I'm sponsored. I'm really not. I just really love their shadows. But this one is so beautiful. It really is an any time of year kind of palette, but you do get a lot of really pretty kind of pastel soft colors in here that I thought made it perfect for the spring. Here's a close-up of the palette and the swatches so you can see how they looked. As you can see, lots of beautiful soft colors. You do get some jewel tones as well, but I love the pastel pinks and purples. Even that green is really fun and vibrant without being too bold, especially if you pair it with some of the neutrals. And you do get a lot of neutrals in here as well. Sometimes I think when you have a palette that has a couple like glaring colors in it, they can look a little bit intimidating, but I think it's always helpful if there's like 3 colors that maybe intimidate you. Say for example, this green, maybe this yellow, and this purple maybe intimidated you. Everything else in here is pretty neutral in my opinion. Lots of soft neutral browns, light to dark, lots of soft pinks, beautiful shimmers in here. You guys know how much I love the Sydney Grace shimmer formula. It is the most metallic and reflective of all the formulas. It's just so foiled and spectacular. I really, really love it. Beautiful palette. Tons of product in here as well. This one is a little bit more pricey. I know it's above $50, but you get so many different shades and so much in each pan. So definitely some bang for your buck here, especially considering the high quality. Next, I have one that I know I have mentioned in videos like this before, but I could not mention it. It is still a favorite of mine. It's a little bit more colorful. This one is from Juvia's Place. This is the Magic Mini Palette by Juvia's Place. I hope they still offer this one. I meant to check before I started filming this video. I will let you guys know right here if they offer it. But in either case, maybe there's a chance you have this in your collection still. It is a stunning palette. It is a little bit more on the colorful side, and you do get some very bold colors in here, but you also get some of the prettiest pastel soft colors, especially shimmers in here that are so perfect for spring and are very, very unique. There's a lot of shades in here that aren't like other like pastel pinks or shimmery purples that I own, and I do own quite a few, but Juvia's Place has its own special formula. I think it is close to Sydney Grace's formula. I still think Sydney Grace has one of the best formulas out there, but for something that's more affordable, I think Juvia's Place gets awfully close. Their shimmers are really rich, really metallic. They go on really well, especially when you apply them with your finger. I love this purple right here. It has almost like a blue shift to it. I don't know that I'd quite call it a duochrome because it just is a little bit shifty. It's not like super multi-dimensional where you turn a different direction and it's a completely different color. It just has some like shifty blues and pinks in it that are so stunning. I love shades like this. I know they can look a little bit intimidating, but I think just putting something really soft and neutral in your crease, throwing this all over the lid, maybe a little bit of wing liner and just a light amount of mascara makes for such a pretty look that's not over the top or overly bold. It's just a very fun palette to play with, and if you do want to go bold, you definitely can with this one. You get some really rich dark colors here, some really stunning jewel tones along with all the pastels and a handful of neutrals. Really fun palette if you like a little bit of color. Also for the color lovers that maybe have a little bit more money to spare, or maybe you happened to pick this one up when it came out. Was this last year? Actually, I think it was 2 years ago. It's the Natasha Denona Pastel palette. This one is so much fun. This is one of the few Natasha Denona mid-size palettes that I considered not buying because it was quite colorful, at least on first impression. But I am so happy I ended up buying this palette. I think it's such a fun one. I mean, just look at this thing. You open this up, this looks like an Easter egg hunt in a palette. I mean, everything is so vibrant, but still pastel and soft at the same time. A lot of variety inside here. Some of the prettiest lid shimmers you will ever see. Like this pink, this green, this pink, and then like these two right here, this yellow. It looks like just like a simple yellow, and I usually don't like yellows on me, but this one is really buttery and bright. It looks like popcorn, and it almost has a little bit of silver in it. It's so, so pretty, so flattering on the eyes. It really brightens up your eyes, or even if you just put this on your inner corner, it's stunning. And then there's some really fun bold mattes in here as well that really give your eyes some punch, yet they're not primary colors. They're still going to be a little bit softer in tone. It is pretty colorful. There is really nothing in here that is neutral, but everything is soft. Everything's a little bit subtle. It's not too bold or over the top. And even when you combine different colors together, which I usually don't do. If I'm doing color, I usually stay monochromatic, but this is one of the few palettes that if I am going colorful, you can do something like a pink, like pink on the upper lid and maybe some blue on the lower lash line, and it still looks somewhat wearable because everything is just a little bit light and soft. It's a very fun one. Very excited to give this some use in the next couple months. Next is one that I would be willing to bet many of you own if you like these type of palettes. This one's a little bit less intimidating. It's a simple one from Colourpop, the Blush Crush palette. This is the perfect, soft, feminine, rosy, but not too bold palette for springtime. This creates some of the prettiest looks. I get comments from you guys all the time whenever I mention this palette. So many of you agree this palette is one of Colourpop's best. It looks pretty simple. It looks like something I probably have 10 times over within my collection, but there's something about these tones that are just pink enough and just peach enough, plus the variety of shimmer to matte, light to dark, that makes it effortless. I cannot come away from using this palette and not get just a really soft, beautiful look. And it takes no effort at all. It doesn't really matter what you reach for. I mean, you get a couple varieties as far as like some different transition shades if you want to throw something darker on your outer corner, some beautiful shimmers for the lid. It's just all around a really good palette. It's the type of palette that if you think you don't like color, but maybe you're tired of just reaching for browns all the time, this is the direction I would point you towards. Go for something a little bit rosy, because I just feel like these colors look good on absolutely anyone. They're fun, they're flattering, but they're not too bold. They still look more neutral than colorful in my opinion. Really great palette. If you have not taken a look at this one, I know it's one of their like high sellers. It's been around for a long time. Lots of people love it, and for very good reason. This is a beautiful, beautiful, more affordable palette. Next up, this one I initially had in my top 5, and I ended up swapping it out for another one because I think I like that one just a little bit better. I'm talking about the Anastasia Beverly Hills Nouveau palette. You guys, I raved about this palette last year. It was amongst the top palettes that I tried out in all of 2022. I still feel that way. It's still one of my favorite palettes. It definitely is a neutral palette that leans kind of springy. You get some pastels in here as well. I mean, mainly this like lavender purple. That's the most obvious pastel, but you also get some really soft colors / neutrals in here as well that make it such a pretty palette for the spring. I also think it's a great palette for the fall because you get this kind of like pinky rust color. You get some of these like dark kind of greens and browns, but most of the colors in here are pretty soft. It's pretty neutral. A lot of basics in here. I love this shimmery green that looks more silvery and neutral than green. So if the idea of wearing a green eyeshadow makes you a little bit uncomfortable, this is the type of green that it doesn't look that green on the eyes. It's more like neutral and metallic than anything. It's so, so pretty. Oh, I just love this palette. I think it's such a good one. Their formula is so great. I kind of love that they went to the fewer pans but larger pans rather than their old versions which had the smaller pans but you got more shades. I kind of like this a little bit better. Obviously that depends on the palette that we're talking about, but I love the setup of this one. It's not too overwhelming for me. I'll be honest, I've only ever reached into the purple like once. It's just not like the first purple I usually think of, but it's a really fun one. It's kind of a warmer lavender, which I actually like because I don't generally like cooler toned lavendery purples on me. I just don't think cool tone purples look very good on my skin tone or on my eye color. But this one's a really fun one. It looks really good with either either of these two shimmers right here if you want to put one of these on your inner corner. Really good palette, fun for spring. This is the kind of color that I would expect those of you that are more intimidated by color would not be so intimidated by this palette because the colors are super, super muted, but it's still beautiful and perfect for spring. That leads us to my top 5 spring palettes, starting with this one right here, the cheapest palette that I am mentioning today. You can get this thing for around $3. It's from Wet n Wild. This is their Color Icon palette in Petalette. Now I'm pretty sure that they've had this color theme around for a long time before they went to these white palettes, these newer Color Icon palettes. I think I had that palette and I don't remember being very impressed with it, but this one, I don't know if it's changed or if I maybe didn't give that one much of a chance in its old form. This is so underrated. Even though you only get 5 shades inside here, even though it is Wet n Wild and you're probably gonna end up having to tape the lid because it will likely fall off, these actual shadows and like the color story, the different finishes, the tones, are stunning. This is such a well curated palette. It's one of my favorites in these 5-pan versions. I love that you get a cooler toned transition shade here and then some like very basic kind of neutral shades here. You even get these 2 lighter shimmers right here that are very brightening, almost iridescent. And this white almost has like a pinky gold shift to it that's so interesting. And then the pink kind of has a blue shift to it, but they're both very, very icy and bright. But if you're not into those icy bright shades, this rosy shimmer right here is one of the prettiest lid shades ever. I think it's gorgeous. I think this would look good on anyone. I love that you get the dark purpley plum here if you want to smoke things out. This is again one of those palettes, kind of like how I feel with the Blush Crush palette. You put this on and it's just very, very flattering, very feminine, not too bold or in your face or colorful, but you can get some of the prettiest looks out of this tiny, cheap, very, very simple palette. Don't overlook this one. If you have it in your collection, every time I use this, I'm always wowed. Like I do like a double take, like, wow, I'm so impressed that that thing is only $3. It blows my mind every single time. Definitely worth a look if you're looking for a new spring pickup. Maybe you're on a budget and you haven't tried this one out yet, head to your drugstore and give it a try. You will not regret it. Ignore my son's playing basketball out in the hall. You'll probably hear that noise. But I don't want to tell him to stop. There's snow outside, it's spring break. I'm just gonna let him play. Okay, next up, we've got another Sydney Grace palette. This palette is so good. This is the Sydney Grace and Temptalia On the Horizon palette. I absolutely dislike the packaging of these. It's just not my thing. I never liked the Lisa Frank Trapper Keepers back when they were in, and I know that was like a childhood thing for so many people that I just never really liked. Why am I talking about that though? That's not what we're here to talk about. These shadows, you guys, now they look colorful, maybe a little bit intimidating. I definitely felt that way when I first opened these. Not just this palette, I have another one, the Quintessence palette as well, which is also kind of colorful. This one is my favorite though. And it does look intimidating because you open this up and you think, okay, where's a neutral? Like, is there not a single neutral inside there? But that said, these colors are just so beautiful and flattering. Start off with this pink. I use this pink with any other shadow that I end up reaching for. I start with this pink. I kind of will throw that up in my crease a little bit. Then you can go on your lid with any one of these shimmers here that are a little bit more mid-tone to light. They are some of the prettiest shades in the world, in the Sydney Grace formula that I love, particularly this pastel purple right here. I don't think I own anything quite like this. This is like the shimmery version of the one inside the Nouveau palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Maybe even a little bit lighter. Let me just give it a swatch for you guys so you can see this. It is so pretty. It's almost like a silvery pastel muted purple. So fun. This is again one of those spring colors for those of you that are kind of afraid of color. It's not overly bold in its color. It's really more bold in just its reflectiveness, and it's so, so pretty on the lid. And if you want to make it a little bit smoky and dark, you can add a little bit of this shade in the outer corner. I'm going for some of the greens or blues or silvers, like these tones right here. Makes such a beautiful eye look. So many beautiful shades inside here. This one as well. This is the shade Magellan's Light, which is kind of like a bronzy, pinky taupe. Let's give that one a swatch as well. Oh, you guys, such a beautiful shade for your lid. And they're so unique. There's so many unique shades in here that I absolutely adore. I love this palette so much. Spring is the perfect time to pull this thing out. Very fun one to play with. A little on the pricey side, but I always think the Sydney Grace formula is worth the price. And if you were a Lisa Frank fan back in the 80s or 90s, well, you're gonna love this even more. And that leaves us with my top 3. I have to mention this one right here. This is the Natasha Denona Retro Glam palette. You guys, this is one of the most beautiful color stories in my entire collection, maybe in existence. I just think the curation of this palette, I'm gonna insert the close-up and the swatches for you guys right here so you can kind of see what I mean. I mean, even if you don't like greens, I feel like you can't deny that this color story is just really pretty to look at. There's something about this that just is so beautiful. I love these greens. They are absolutely stunning. I did not know that I was a fan of greens that leaned a little bit more kind of blue and minty, but they're definitely not blue. They're all pretty soft, they're all pretty muted. Then you get some really lovely pinks thrown in here, some neutrals. I just think this is one of the prettiest curated color stories that I have ever seen. Not even to mention the Natasha Denona formula that it's in. Obviously it's a little bit more pricey. This was mentioned as one of the top, I think, was it my top palette that I tried out in 2022? I know I went back and forth between a couple, but this was definitely in the top 3 and it might still be growing on me. I just think this is one of the prettiest palettes that I own. It might even surpass my glam palette from Natasha Denona. Kind of feel like I should do another ranking video because I've accumulated a few more over the last 2 years since I did that last video. So perfect for spring. I just love everything about this. I love the looks that come out of this palette. They are stunning. A lot of variety in here. I love going monochrome with the pinks or the greens or even the bronzes, or you can mix things up and mix and match together without getting anything that's too bold or in your face or over the top. Such a beautiful palette. I'm hoping that Alter Ego will dupe this one because I do think this is one of their best. I know there's a lot of green in here. I know not everyone is into greens, but I'm telling you guys, I did not even know that I like these type of greens until I got this palette and tried them out. And now they're like my favorite thing ever, especially in the spring. I just think this one is so stunning. It definitely deserves to be towards the very top of my mentions. I can't wait to use this one. Okay, that leads us with my last 2. Both of these have been around for a very long time. I think I mentioned these in my last 2 years of top spring palettes to reach for, starting with this one right here. This is from Huda Beauty, the Nude Light Obsessions palette. I don't always love all of these Obsessions palettes, but this one is the very best one, in my opinion. I think there's no issues with any of the formulas inside here. The shimmers are all really rich, really reflective. They're very pigmented. None of them are patchy or hard pan easily, which has been an issue for me with some of the Huda Beauty shimmers. The mattes are always stunning. I think Huda Beauty's mattes are always really spectacular, but the color story of this thing is just so soft and feminine. Again, kind of back to that blush crush, but you get more variety inside here. Obviously it is also a little bit more pricey, but gives you a little bit more variety. You get some duochromes, you get this really beautiful lavender purple that's even a little bit warmer than the one that I mentioned in this Sydney Grace palette. I love the mattes in here. I love that you get like a warm, bright bubblegum pink, you get a cool toned lavender, you get a peach, and then you get this brown that's a little bit more soft, a little bit more muted, not overly smoky. Every look that I create with this one is never too bold or too bright or too smoky or rich. It's just soft enough. It looks very feminine. All of the shimmers are stunning no matter what you reach for in this palette. This is another one of those palettes that you can't screw up. You can reach for anything inside here, whether that be the mattes or the shimmers, and your look is always going to be just perfectly polished and put together. Definitely recommend it. Packaging is amazing as well. I love all the packaging on these Huda Beauty palettes. And that leaves us with my last, and I think I'm still gonna say my #1 pick, and it is from Juvia's Place. It's the Douce palette. I think this one is still discontinued from Juvia's Place. I've been pleading with them to bring this back. Take a look at these swatches though, you guys. This is such a fun, beautiful palette for spring. You might look at this and think this color story is slightly intimidating. You see this magenta pink in the middle, you see this green. Maybe you think I would never wear shades like that, or how would you combine those together? This is such a fun palette though. Combining these, it's like a game to me because you can combine some shades in here you would never think to combine. Say like this pop of magenta up through the crease and then maybe a little bit of this in the outer corner with one of the shimmers on the lid. That's actually a really beautiful eye look that you would never think to do. Or maybe even like this rusty color combined with this green. Nothing is too bold to where you're gonna look crazy. And I say that with all respect to those of you that like wearing bold eyeshadows. I'm just not that brave, so I don't like to wear anything that's super bold or over the top or like attention grabbing. I like to be a little bit more subdued with the color that I use on my eyes, and you can still do that with this palette. Everything's a little bit softer, pretty muted, nothing over the top, but still really fun. I love the Juvia's Place formula. You get so many beautiful lid shades inside here, whether it be this like traditional, just very icy kind of pink right here, which is so pretty. It's like white bubblegum. This one right here has a bit of a blue shift. It's more of like a duochrome, a little bit more blue and icy. This green shimmer is so lovely and fun. And if you use this with a brush, it's not quite as bold and in your face as it initially looks. Like you can get more of like a green kind of shifty look. Hey, I'm gonna take you up to the bowling alley. We're gonna meet them up there. Oh. Yeah. Really fun palette to play with. I've been talking about it for years. There's a lot of you that have mentioned that this is your favorite Juvia's Place palette as well. Maybe some of you still have it in your collection. Maybe you forgot about it. If you have, pull it back out this spring. It definitely deserves some love. I can't wait to play with mine again. This is one of those palettes that just gets me really excited for springtime. And let me just throw out one more plea to Juvia's Place. You guys should bring this one back. I think it was definitely one of your very best. And that is it, you guys. Those are my top 10 palette recommendations for spring. Hopefully there were one or two in there that you own as well. If not, I'd love to hear what your favorite palettes are to reach for in the springtime. Let us know down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Happy springtime, happy Easter for those of you that will be celebrating. We have 6 inches of snow outside that I'm crossing my fingers will melt by Sunday. But even if it doesn't, at least I have some beautiful spring makeup to look forward to. Hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for stopping by today. Let me give you one last reminder. If you haven't subscribed, please do that before you leave, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye. Very color, no, we're not doing that again. No, very, no, really. Find, can I say, extremely. Okay, there's that really word again. I'm really trying to stop saying really.